Air traffic congestion at Dublin Airport is to be reviewed, with a third terminal among the possibilities to be considered. That was the first of two airport decisions the Cabinet made yesterday. The other was that the Irish Aviation Authority is to be put in charge of noise management at the airport. Now, as we've reported before on the programme, this isn't just about the needs of airlines and passengers. Before we look at the wider picture, Jackie Fox got this reaction to that decision on noise management from Pauline McGuinness of the St Margaret's and the Ward Residents Group, who lives nearby.
The DAA's planning permission is as it is. It's a legal document that the condition that their night flights are restricted and that they properly insulate people's houses so that they can live with the noise. You know, how do you live? How do you live under the flight path, and how do you live between two runways?
I suppose a lot of people will be thinking here as well, listening to this, they'd say, why would people buy a house close to an airport in the first place? Surely you would expect this kind of noise levels. People
have lived in this community long before Dublin Airport was there. And it's the second generation or the third generation living in the houses.
And that's Pauline McGuinness, one of the people affected by what's ahead. Now, we're talking long-term here as well as short-term to review where we're at and where we're likely to go as the government announces this review. We're joined by Eoghan Corry of Travel Extra. Good morning and welcome. First of all, when they talk about congestion, how serious is it at present?
It's all in around a very, very short period of time, Colin. This is key to it. Rush hour at the airport isn't the same as rush hour on the motorway, and what we're talking about here is 5 to maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning is when all of those flights are required. That's when the second runway is required. It isn't required at 3 in the afternoon. It's like building a third lane on the M50 and saying, you can only open it at 9 a.m. The requirement, a lot of airports work in a series of waves during the day. The way Dublin is structured at the moment, the big crunch and the capacity crunch, which is going to get worse, is that period in the morning. Very interesting. The definition of night flying stops at 7. So if it stopped at 5, there actually wouldn't be a big issue at here. A lot of the people at the ploughing championship this morning would not regard 7 o'clock as the end of the night. They're up before that. What Shane Ross seems to be doing is throwing a couple of different issues into the mix and going to a new forum to get them solved.
Yeah, because the first of those issues is the new runway. They have two runways, but in effect it's only one at the moment.
Effectively it's only one. People are talking about the second or the third, but really it's the parallel runway. Yeah, there's a crosswind runway which is used for...
if the wind is blown the other way.
That's right.
But at the moment they have planning permission which runs out next year.
2017.
So that's a decision which is really up to the Aviation Authority, or is it up to the government, or how does that work?
The planning permission is in place. The planning permission comes with restrictions of 65 night flights. The night doesn't end till 7 a.m. They're already running at over 90, 100 flights at peak. That happened before 7 a.m.
And they're not happy with the restrictions imposed. It's the Dublin Airport Authority.
Dublin Airport want to go back to planning. They've already signalled this. And there are two related things they want to tackle, and one of those is that night flight.
So is that really between them and Bord Pleanála, and the government isn't involved?
Very much. Right. That they go back to that planning process and they say the big issue now is, will going to another forum allow that planning permission to time out? It's unlikely, by the way, they would have got their runway built by 2017. It was delayed by recession more than anything else.
But if they get started?
But if they get started, and it's one of the big questions is, will this push us back into the start of a planning process? And there's an existential question here is, are we a hub or are we a spoke? The hub and spoke system, which is how long haul aviation really works, Dublin was always seen as feeding Heathrow, and that was traditionally our role. What we've seen in the last 10, 15 years is Dublin growing as people funneling through Dublin and going on to North America. There are 4 big airports that serve North America: Frankfurt, Heathrow, Amsterdam and Paris, and we're the 5th biggest in Europe. Willie Walsh, when he bought Aer Lingus, talked about making us the 3rd runway for Heathrow, growing that. So, to give an example, Amsterdam was always a big hub airport. Brussels was something of a half hub. When the wind got cold after 9/11, Sabina went down. it's very important that we position ourselves as a hub, and that's what Dublin Airport want, that's what IAG want, and what could put a halter on that is a big planning delay.
Okay, well that's the big question, which is going to be sorted out, as I say.
At the risk of sounding like the Gilbert and Sullivan or the Simon and Garfunkel song, "I'd rather be a hub than a spoke."
That and existential questions. You never know what you'll bring up. Now, the question, therefore, of the issue to be reviewed, whether what to do about traffic congestion and a third terminal. Does all that depend on what happens about the second runway?
The big capacity constraint is the runway.
So the consultants can't really report until they know what the decision is.
Absolutely. The third runway should be triggered by a 32 million, and we're growing 12% in Dublin Airport. We're going to hit nearly 28 million this year. We're going to hit in 2018 32 at that rate of growth if it doesn't slow down. It is a question: does that trigger the third runway, or does it just put us over the cap, the existing local authority cap? But a third runway terminal. Sorry, my apologies. Will be required, and that is in position. They have the land for it.
Can you not just move people through more efficiently?
Dublin Airport say it's not a priority for them at the moment, but there is a cap of 32 million, and once we hit the 32, then they start looking, and you will. There are other capacity constraints.
Just remind us the figures again. You say at the cap of 32 million passengers is the limit imposed by.
That's under their existing planning.
And at the moment
they're going to hit 27 million this year at 12% growth.
So the earliest we could be talking about a third terminal would be when?
2018. But it's unlikely that what will happen is when they hit the cap will be extended. So the Terminal 3 is going to be a little bit further. Terminal 3 flight on time. It's going to be a little bit further down the line. But the real priority at the moment is sorting out the big capacity constraint, and there are other capacity constraints like the number of wide-body aircraft that can be parked in Terminal 2 at the moment. But the big capacity constraint is that second runway. And it's very important.
And that's a planning issue.
It goes right through.
Eoghan Corry, thank you very much.